over in San Francisco, there is a whole bunch of politically correct language that has just come out from the Board of Supervisors over there. This doesn't have to do with illegal immigration necessarily. This has to do with crime generally in San Francisco. They announced, in San Francisco, has one of the highest crime rates in the country, they announced that they are going to finally tackle the issue of crime. You know how they're going to do it? Are they going to arrest the criminals? No. Are they going to clean up the streets? No. Are they going to enforce more laws and pass more laws? No, they're not going to do any of that. They're just going to stop calling them criminals. That'll do it. That'll do it. Why didn't I think of that? If you don't call criminals criminals, then you don't have any more criminals, right? That's the idea. What they're going to start doing now is changing all sorts of language around this issue. So juvenile delinquents, you know what that's the bad term. Bad kids, you can't call them that. Kids who commit crime, you can't call them that. Juvenile delinquents, you can't call them that. The new term is young persons impacted by the juvenile justice system. Now, everybody is impacted by the juvenile justice system. Everyone who lives in this society is impacted by it because that's the system to take bad kids out who are committing crimes. Drug addicts they're not drug addicts anymore. They're not even substance abusers, which was the new politically correct term just a few years ago. Now they are persons with a history of substance abuse. And then criminals and convicts. This is my favorite one of all. Criminals and felons, convicts, they are now, quote, justice-involved persons. This is my favorite PC jargon of all because it is actually the opposite of the truth. Criminals are not justice-involved persons. Criminals, by definition, are injustice-involved persons. They are committing injustices, not justices. It would be like San Francisco referring to their epidemic of drug and feces-infested streets as sanitation-involved sidewalks. Doesn't make a lot of sense. But this is what PC does. You know, instead of solving the problem, instead of grappling with reality, these politicians in San Francisco think that they can just change the name because it's a lot easier. Think about how the left did this. They've done this for years and years and years. Barack Obama runs for president in 2008. He says he's going to end these wars in the Middle East. So he gets into office. Does he end the wars? No. He actually launches more wars in the Middle East. But he doesn't call them wars. He calls them, quote, overseas contingency operations. So there you go. That's one way to end a war. You just stop calling it a war and then it's not a war anymore, right? They do this with illegal aliens. With millions and millions, at least 11 million, probably many more, foreign nationals illegally living in this country. How are we going to deal with that problem? We could either deal with the actual problem, or we can do what the left does, which is just pretend that they're not foreign nationals. We can use the term undocumented Americans, which has now been adopted by a lot of left-wingers. So there's no more foreigners in the country, right? Because they're not. They're undocumented Americans, so they can't be foreigners, right? Same thing, I mean, the biggest cultural issue of the day, even though it only affects a small number of people, it dominates our discourse, transgenderism. Instead of actually getting help for men who are confused about their biological sex, the left just uses PC language to rebrand them as transgender women. So now they're not men who have a problem, a psychological problem. They're women, kind of, in a way, with the language. This kind of PC jargon is offensive to language. I mean, it's offensive from a linguistic point of view, but it's also just offensive to people. If I were in San Francisco, I would be really upset because you elect politicians to reduce crime. You address them to do what you want them to do. You elect them to pass policies that will be good for your community. But it's hard to do that. You have to make difficult decisions. You have to show leadership and courage and moral vision. And the San Francisco politicians don't have any of that. So instead what they're doing is they're just pretending the problem doesn't exist at all. This was a huge reason that people voted for President Trump in 2016. They voted for him for the border, they voted for him for the economy, they voted for him for trade, sure. Largely, I think they voted for him because he came out and he said political correctness is killing this country. And I'm not going to be politically correct. I don't have time to be politically correct. I talked to people, even before I liked Trump in the primaries, back when I was supporting Ted Cruz. I would talk to some of my friends. They say, we love Trump. I'd say, I'm skeptical of Trump. I don't know. He's donated to Democrats. He seems like a little bit liberal. He talks kind of funny. I'm not sure that I support Trump. They said, we need Trump because Trump will defeat political correctness. So what does that mean? I don't elect politicians for those cultural reasons. I elect them for policies. But my friends were right. Political correctness is so awful. It's just lies. It's just deception. When people use politically correct jargon, they are just trying to deceive you. They are using soft euphemisms to confuse you about difficult concepts that they want you to swallow, whole premises they want you to take over. This is a real danger to the country. You know, when people use that, you got to be on your guard. No criminal is going to be reformed by you pretending he's not a criminal. We have 10,000 prisoners getting out of state and federal prisons every day in this country. We should reintegrate them into society. We should prevent them from going to prison in the first place. One way we could do that is by starting at home, fixing broken families. You have huge rates of single parents, huge rates of out-of-wedlock birth. And people who are raised in a home without a father are multiples more likely to commit crime, to end up in prison. Tackle those issues. That's harder. It's not as easy as changing the language, but that's what we're electing people to do. If you enjoyed that video, be sure to hit the like button so that the rest of the YouTubers know that our content is the best content out there.